Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Continuing with our exploration of Burning Chrome, the anthology by William Gibson, we are now going to look at the very short story, Fragments of a Hologram Rose. The main character in the story of Fragments of a Hologram Rose is a man named Parker. And at the beginning of the story, we learn very quickly that Parker has a lot of trouble with sleeping. One of the ways that he gets around this is by using a deck that puts him into delta sleep. He can go from alpha to delta with this deck experience. Parker is using something called an ASP deck to sleep. And with the ASP deck, someone else has the experience, they record it, and then everyone can play it back on the deck, and then you had the experience too, which is very much like the movie Brainstorm. If you've never seen it, Christopher Walken, Natalie Wood, it's a great movie, highly recommended. So anyway, but without too much of a digression there, we also see that Parker has recently experienced a heartbreaking separation or breakup with someone who he loved very much. We don't get a whole lot of details on her. And then the story is jumping to, in a fragmented way, to other aspects of his life and other things that he did. In amongst all of that, he finds something from her. He finds actually three things from her. He finds the remnants of a sandal, which he destroys, and he finds the remnants of a picture of a hologram rose, and he feeds that into the shredder too, but it gets made into a 1,000 pieces, and it's a hologram, and I'm sure you know where that's going, right? And then, of course, the other thing that he finds is a remnant of an ASP deck. And so it's her experience. So he knows if he plays it, he's going to have yet another experience of her, and he's already hurting badly because she's gone. Being the lovesick person that he is, he can't help but take a look at what's on the deck. This story is very short, and it would be a crime to tell you too much more about this. But as you've probably already intuited, the hologram rose, every piece of the hologram rose that was shattered also contains the complete piece of the hologram when exposed to light properly. So that one hologram rose picture has now become 1,000 hologram rose pictures. And it's a reflection or an interpretation of his life. His life is this fragmented set of memories and experiences and lots of bad sleep, dealing with the constant brownouts and all of the problems that come with his feelings of abandonment and all of the hard things that he lived through in revolutionary times while the world was changing, and not always for the better, in fact hardly ever for the better. So that it's this kind of sunshiny, perfect antiseptic Sid Mead future juxtaposed with this low-life, high-tech, revolutionary aspects of life where, you know, people die and things happen, and you wind up, if you're this character, seeing these things and experiencing these things, so that he has these incredible ups and downs and sideways experiences, all within just a little bit of this talking to himself that happens in the story. Now, the story doesn't really contain much more than that. The story is how this character wakes up and has an experience and kind of goes through his day and has this moment of hesitancy where he wonders if he should play the ASP deck of her experiences. The story is like a few other Gibson short stories that we've experienced in this book now, and that is that there's no real antagonist. The hero of the story, or the main character, he's really just a main character. There's not much that's heroic about him. He's his own worst enemy, from the sounds of it, and he's been abandoned by somebody he loved, but he's also, been abandoned really by everybody who should love him. So nothing has really ever gone all that well for him, and yet he's managed to eke out an interesting existence. And like a lot of people in Gibson's stories, he's not really worried too much about the legal ramifications of his actions, much like a hacker would be at that time. It was someone who, people then didn't see, people who did hacking and people who did things with technology that they shouldn't have been doing at the time didn't see it as illegality. They saw it as their right and an adventure. The main character in the story is someone who is tragically broken, and we don't really see any progress or change. You know, that this character doesn't progress in any way. And yet it's a fascinating read because, you know, we've all been there. You know, when you read this story, you will find things that you relate to immediately. So that is definitely Gibson's gift, is to write this story that really goes nowhere, is really not about anything, and is utterly beautiful. He has just a wonderful prose style, as I've mentioned before. It is not standard storytelling. And in fact, it's the kind of storytelling that you tend to write when you first get into story writing. And then editors tell you, I can't do anything with this story because nothing happens in it. It's not about anything. But in this, it's a little more subtle, of course. I mean, of course it is. It's Gibson. So things are happening, but I wouldn't say that this is a story with a climax. This is just a story of a happening. It's beautifully told. And so that's the best reason to read it. It's a story that would be well worth multiple readings. So it's also that good. And I like the idea that Gibson has made this short story that kind of confounds the standard story approach and the standard story rules that editors often demand. I mean, I guess if you're good enough, and this is the key, right, then, you know, an editor can become very flexible about the typical rules and standards of writing. So that is something to think about and something to shoot for, I suppose. This story has a haunting quality, and I really liked that about this story. So I like that it's kind of a rule-bending, rule-breaking story when it comes to how most people are told to write short stories, or how most people are expected to write them. You can see when you read a story like this that Gibson is somebody who really gets writing. I mean, he wrote these short stories, and as good as each of these short stories are, then he wrote Neuromancer.